Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Holistic Health Podcast. This is a very exciting moment for Amie and I. We're using a fancy new platform to record our podcast on in the hope that we are then able to start creating some video podcasts for you guys. So hopefully if this is in your ear holes successfully, we've nailed the brief. But I don't know if everyone else is like this, but there's certain things that my brain is intelligent with, and there's many things that it's not. And like computer stuff, and also anything that requires thinking about fine details and processes, I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean? What step? Give it to me in plain English. But we've managed. Amie came over, and I feel like when we're together, it's so much easier to do stuff because I know I don't know, on my own, I find it so much harder.
Oh, same here. It's just better together, right? What do they say? Problem shared is a problem halved. And yeah, I feel like we're all growing up little podcasters now that we've landed in the video world. Although
I
we
know,
are
only like
mourning.
1 million years later, but that's fine. I guess we do what we can.
Yes, we got there in the end,
We
and
did.
but now we have to actually get dressed to our hair. So
Yeah,
yeah, for
totally.
you, for
Well, I
you, we're
think,
doing this for you.
yeah, we really are. No joke. Well, let's dive in. So, progesterone is something that it's actually, we were looking at some of our podcast stats the other day, which we probably should do more than we do. But one of the most popular topics that we've actually chatted about has been progesterone. So, we wanted to revisit some of the important things around it because it is such an important hormone. So, for anyone who's not aware of what progesterone is, it's basically a hormone that plays a really key role in fertility, in pregnancy, in overall health and well being, in having healthy, balanced, easeful periods and cycles. And it's something that is produced after ovulation, and only if you ovulate do you produce it. And it's produced by something called the corpus luteum, which is this really cool, incredible, temporary kind of gland that we create after we ovulate, and a little bit is produced in the adrenal glands as well. But it's such an important molecule, and for that reason, we wanted to make you aware of some of the kind of signs that you might notice in your own body that tell you may have low progesterone. Because if that's happening, you absolutely want to do something about it. Because and regardless of whether or not you're in a season of trying to have a baby or not, as much as it's important for that, it's also important for you just as a general healthy, happy human. And I think that with PMS being something that so many people struggle with, and period issues, sometimes getting that progesterone up is just the magic you needed to solve the whole problem or a huge chunk of it. So, do you want to kick us off with the first sign, in no particular order, of low progesterone?
Mm, yes, let's dive right in because this is just progesterone is truly our superpower as women. And unfortunately, because it is the hormone of gestation and fertility and ultimately safety, there's so much that can impact it and then ultimately leave us short of this beautiful molecule that makes us feel really good. So, one of the most obvious signs of low progesterone is spotting leading up to your period. So, progesterone, when it's produced in sufficient quantities and for an appropriate amount of time, one of the things it does is stabilize the uterine lining, making sure that if an embryo has been fertilized, it has the opportunity to fully anchor in before a period comes to shift everything out. And so, what I would be looking for is, I mean, if we talk about a textbook perfect period, which no one has, well, very few people have, That is when your period arrives, it's just you go from having nothing one moment to a bright red flow the next. And most women might experience that at some point in their lives, but most women typically aren't having that month after month, although that is the ideal that we're kind of aiming for if everything is going really well. If you are noticing a bit of spotting the day before your period arrives, like we wouldn't put that on the pathological list. We wouldn't be rushing immediately to, oh no, this needs to be fixed. However, if you're noticing spotting for 2 days prior to your period, 3 days prior to your period, some women will experience spotting for a week before their period actually arrives. And in fact, in really severe cases, I've even seen not just ovulatory spotting, but spotting from the point of ovulation all the way through to the period. And it is quite literally a red flag in your
Mm.
underwear that you're not making enough progesterone, and therefore the uterine lining is actually breaking down prematurely ahead of time when your period is actually due. So that would be the first thing that we would say look out for.
Yeah, yep. And then another one would actually be feeling quite anxious in the lead up to your period. So, in that kind of week to 2 weeks leading up to your period, and anxiousness that feels cyclical, as in it's predictably coming back at that time and disappearing, or really reducing at other times of your cycle. That's another red flag that you might have low progesterone. And part of the reason that is because progesterone is actually converted into your brain into something called allopregnanolone, and that actually activates something called GABA. So GABA is one of our really calming brain chemicals. It promotes like a calm, relaxed state, and it also definitely counters anxiety, and it buffers the kind of get up and go of estrogen in that part of your cycle as well. And so kind of estrogen is very stimulating in a good way, like as in it's a bit of like a go-getter hormone, and progesterone really helps you to calm down. And when those are out of balance, or you just don't have enough of the progesterone, you that sometimes for some women can manifest as this feeling of like anxiousness, that is disproportionate to other times of the cycle, the situation, the context. And I always say to people, or to my clients in particular, you always know, like, you know your body best. You know when you feel like this is quote unquote out of character, out of proportion to your normal responses, when it's coming in a cyclical way. And this is another reason why we are such big advocates of tracking your cycle in an app, where there's a notes or journal section where you can free enter some symptoms, so that you can then look back and go, when is this happening? Is it cyclical? It's just such an important bit of information for yourself, but also for any practitioner that you then go on to work with if you do need that support.
Yes, and it really can be quite debilitating. But look out for those subtle signs too if you're feeling just not as relaxed in that second half of your cycle. But certainly for anyone with major symptoms, that's a big deal. And same goes for sleep disturbances. As Nat mentioned, you've got that beautiful role of progesterone and its relationship to GABA, which is such a calming, soothing, slowing down neurotransmitter. So, as Nat was saying, that GABA plays such an important role in helping us feel cool, calm, and collected. And when we don't have enough of that, we end up being acting under the influence of glutamate, which is overstimulating. It revs us up, speeds everything, and kind of makes us feel a little bit overstimulated, really. And of course, during the day, that might feel like anxiety, but at nighttime, that can become more pronounced and result in difficulties sleeping. So, With that, it can often be trouble falling asleep, although if you are exhausted, you might be passing out and then waking up in the early hours of the morning and tossing and turning from there. So, if you're noticing that is particularly pronounced in the second half of your cycle, to me, that would also be another indicator that your progesterone production needs a little bit of support.
Yep, here. And of a similar thread, you'll start to notice a pattern, by the way. I'd also say another sign or symptom of low progesterone is just that feeling of having really low stress resilience. Like, when you just feel like anything is like overwhelming and too much, and your bandwidth is really low from that capacity perspective. Of course, like, it's normal to feel a difference in your capacity between the first half and the second half of your cycle. So I don't think we need to pathologize every shift in capacity in that way, because it is normal or within the spectrum of normal, that you feel like there is a difference in how extroverted, how full, how much you can take on in that lead up to your period compared to that first half. But what I'm more speaking to is this feeling of like black and white, chalk and cheese between the first half and the second half, or feeling it in a really exaggerated way where just general day-to-day tasks or little things that come up feel like they're a huge deal, and you just can't cope, or you've got that sense that you're really struggling. And there's a few reasons for that. A lot of it does have to do with, again, the fact that if you don't have enough progesterone, as we've already said, you therefore don't necessarily have as much GABA, and therefore aren't able to get into that relaxation state, or feeling, you struggle more to feel emotionally steady. And I'd also say that the other part to it is that if you don't have enough progesterone via several different mechanisms, you also can be struggling with like higher cortisol spikes, which are a result of more stress, and it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. And so you can have this feeling of like, I'm wired but tired, or I can't re-regulate myself after stress like I usually would. And that's going to be relative to everyone, because everyone sits on a spectrum of how not good they are, but how easily they can regulate their own nervous system when it's kicked into a sympathetic dominant state, as in that flight or flight state. But what we're talking about is relative change for you. And again, like, I think it's really important to keep tracking those things as well. And of course, everything touches everything. As you know, if you're a human living on this earth who's ever had a bad sleep, if you have a bad sleep because of low progesterone, like Amie was just talking about, that's also going to affect your resilience the next day. Like, I know everyone's a little bit different, but I'm absolutely pathetic if I've had really bad sleep for more than a night or two. So, yes, thoughts and prayers for my husband mainly if that happens. But yeah, it's definitely a thing. It's not just you, it is a thing.
Absolutely. And I did have a moment myself on the weekend, and just life is just getting a bit too much, and you've been underslept for too long. I wanted to hurl myself out of the car, a moving car, because I just wanted to escape feeling overstimulated. And I ended up plugging my ears with my fingers and humming like a child about to have a full on meltdown. So,
Just in case you thought we
interestingly,
had
that
it all together, absolutely not. Sometimes we hum on the highway, so.
You know what? Actually, so it's cycle day 2 today. So that would have been cycle day like 28 or something like that. And I absolutely have had the tiniest bit of spotting for about a handful of days. So absolutely, on this occasion, my progesterone has I've been cut short on what I really need. And interestingly, these symptoms, you might not have all of them. It usually, as Nat said, might show up like where you're most vulnerable or where you're most stretched as far as capacity goes. And the last sign that I'm going to talk about, this actually didn't happen for me, but this can be another indication of insufficient progesterone production, and that is a short luteal phase. So, if you're not that familiar with the different phases of the menstrual cycle, that may not mean much to you. But if we were to just really simplify things, our menstrual cycle can be effectively split into two halves: the time before ovulation and the time after. And it's punctuated by a period in between. And typically speaking, a follicular phase and a luteal phase should be quite balanced, roughly 14 days each, resulting in a cycle of about 28, 29 days, if you include that ovulatory day in there as well. Now, there are a few ways you can measure and kind of monitor ovulation and track your luteal phase. And the best way to do that is using the symptothermal method, where you are tracking, the drying up of cervical mucus, for instance, and also your basal body temperature. Again, if your progesterone production is not as ideal as it could be, you actually might not notice a drying up of cervical mucus in that second half of your cycle, or it may not be as dry as it could be. What you will also notice if you are tracking your basal body temperature is when that thermal shift occurs, you'll see a rise in temperature of at least 0.2 degrees Celsius or zero point 0.4 if you're using Fahrenheit, which should remain consistently elevated throughout that second half of the cycle. So if you're noticing your temperature is either slow to rise, or it's quick to fall, or it's zipping up and down, or it is falling short of that 0.2 degrees Celsius, they're all red flags to me also that your progesterone production needs some help. So it's Dr. Lara Bryden, naturopathic doctor, who says our menstrual cycle is our monthly report card, and that is absolutely true. The quality of the periods we have are a reflection of what the last cycle has, or the last month has been like for us. However, I would say our body is actually giving us a lot of hints and clues along the way that we get these messages long before our period actually arrives. And that can appear as soon as, that ovulatory day, or anywhere along the luteal phase. So it's certainly one of those things where we're always looking to identify the root cause, treat the root cause, support the body nutritionally, support the body using environmental and lifestyle medicine. But if you've ever Googled how to raise progesterone, you'll probably see there's hundreds and hundreds of things that you could potentially do, and it can become a little bit like throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks. So the reason we put this episode on actually was when we look back at our stats, we realized that the most downloaded episode of all time was like our third episode together, which was how to increase progesterone, or signs of low progesterone, something like that. So we thought, let's have this conversation again, but we'd like to take the conversation a little bit deeper with you and provide you more structured support that we can't really do via a podcast. So we're really excited to let you know we're actually running a masterclass in a month. In fact, in one menstrual cycle. Did we do this on purpose?
How good. I love this for us.
I love this, for 29 days from today. Well, this is the day of recording. Actually, by the time you hear this, it will probably be maybe 3.5 weeks. So let's give you the details. So if you can relate to any of these symptoms, and especially if you can relate to several of them, you will probably want to come along to our masterclass called The Progesterone Solution, Your Blueprint for Balanced Hormones. And this is really going to be a deeper dive with the two of us on looking at how to Improve your progesterone. We're going to be looking at how we make it, when and how to test it, why you need it, why you really need it, even if you're not planning to have a baby. And we're going to go through nutritional strategies, lifestyle strategies, talk about some of the nutrients and herbs. So we're very excited to be sharing this with you because, like I said at the very beginning of the episode, progesterone is our superpower. When we're making optimal amounts of that, we can honestly conquer the world and just not get rattled and phased by things. And to further support you, if you plan on joining us live, we're actually going to be sharing a cheat sheet that you can download with all of the recommendations so you can print them off and keep them somewhere safe, as well as a recipe collection specifically to nourish, nurture, and feed your hormones. So that is coming up on November 4th. We're going to be running that. We are officially having daylight savings then. So for anyone on the Eastern Seaboard in Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time, it would be 7 p.m. our time. And for the Queenslanders who are hanging out with Nat with no daylight saving, it'll be 6 p.m. your time.
Yeah, and just if you're tuning in from New Zealand, the US, the UK, which we have many listeners overseas, just use a little time converter to get the time zone correct for you. There will be a recording as well if you can't make it live, but we are reserving the bonuses and also the live Q&A time for people who show up live. And if you are keen to join, we also are running a early bird special at the moment. So it's $39 at the moment, and it will be and like for the next week or two, probably for the next 10 days, I should say. So if you're keen to join, like, don't delay, because we will be putting up the price after it's been out for 10 days, in terms of after your ability to come and sign up has been out for 10 days. Speaking of which, the link to get your ticket and secure your spot can be found both in the show notes and also in our Instagram bios. If you get lost, please just DM me, Nat, and I will flick the link over to you so you can register ASAP. I should also say that it is going to be a degree of more depth compared to what we share on the podcast. We will be being a little bit more specific and detailed in terms of our clinical recommendations that we often reserve just for our one-to-one clients. So bring a notepad, bring your pen, and make sure that you tune in, because we really want you to walk away with a very practical, hands-on idea of how to actually boost this yourself. And it's our hope that that's going to be completely enough for you to really up-level your cycles and your experience of that lead up to your period, and even your period itself. Because what we didn't get to go into today, which we will in the masterclass, is how not enough progesterone really affects your experience of your actual bleed, not just that lead up to your period. So excited to share more with you, and also just so excited to get to connect. It's been a while since we've done anything live, and as I said, we will absolutely be building in a live Q&A component to it. So if you want to come and pick our brains around anything hormone related, it's definitely the virtual room to be in.